Hey YouTube, my name's Ed, and welcome to part 2 in my How to Build a Website from Scratch series. If you haven't watched part 1 first, as we learned how to build the actual web page, and a lot of this is going to build on top of what we learned last time. So in this lesson, we're going to learn the div tag or division tag, the section tag, span tag, and how to create lists. So let's get started. Okay guys, so I have my index file open here that we created last time. Again, I'm using Atom. The link is in the description where you can download that editor again. And also, again, you can use whatever editor you want. For my day job, I use Sublime Text, but Atom looks really promising and it's really cool. And it has a lot of the same features, if not more, because it's a community project. So check it out. So, the first thing I'd like to get into is creating the list, actually, which I mentioned last, but I'm actually going to teach it first. So, after everything here, you know what, we could start with, we'll leave all our existing content here for now, and we'll create another HR tag, and below this, we're going to create what's called an unordered list. And for short, again, acronyms and HTML, all you have to do is type UL. Now we tab a few times and we create a closing UL tag. And this is the beginning of our unordered list object. And now one thing we're going to do now is, or the next thing rather, is create a list item. So inside of the UL tags, we're going to put an open tag and type li. And we'll put the text my first list item and a closing li and close. Okay, if I preview this, you'll see there it is. We have a bulleted item called my first list item. And one of the reasons I want to teach this super early on is because the unordered list is a very, very common tag in HTML for more advanced things like creating menus and navigation elements. Like it's much more powerful and used for many more things than just creating a list. So to demonstrate it further, we're going to create some more items in this list. Now, why I want you guys to use Atom is because this editor, as well as Sublime Text, has features to create lists easier and faster. So to demonstrate that, if you're using Atom, you're going to hit Control-Shift-D. And what that does is it duplicates the current line you're on. Alternatively, if you want to delete a whole line, you can hit Control-Shift-K, and it would delete that line. So, shortcuts are very important for programming, especially a day job worker myself, working on my own as a contractor. You want to be able to do things as quickly and efficiently as possible. So just like with any job. So definitely get in the habit of using shortcut keys and learning how to utilize those type of things in editors. And of course you don't have to use it, but again, it's faster. So I'm going to create second item here. And my second item. And I'll do one more called my third item. And another shortcut key, if this works similar to... Oh no, it doesn't. There's my first blooper of these. In Sublime, I have another hotkey where I can select all the text inside of a code like an li, but I don't know what that is in Atom, and it might be something. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I don't know what it is. So my third item. And save and view that in your web browser. And there you go, you have 3 items. Another important to note is similar to the paragraph and heading tags, list items and unordered lists contain their default styling elements as well. Typically they have padding and margin on them. And lists are one of the things that I find to be most annoying to deal with when browsers put default styling elements on them, because they put a lot of padding and margin on them, and you have to remove all that when you want to create things like menus or navigation elements out of it. So, the next thing I want to teach is the ordered list tag. So, different from an unordered list, we have an ordered list, which is OL. And we're going to create a closing for that. And we still use the same thing inside of it, a list item. And I'll put my first ordered list item, and followed by my second. And you can write whatever text you want inside of those. Hit save and refresh. And now notice here that the ordered list created numbers here. So every time I'd add an item to this list, if I went back into here and duplicated this a few times, for each item that I create in this list, it will automatically number this out. Now, one thing to note is that the unordered list can accomplish the same thing with CSS, and the ordered list can also be manipulated to function like the unordered list. So CSS definitely changes the functionality to some of this, but the important takeaway and why to know this stuff is that mostly for search engine uses, browsers are going to interpret an ordered list or unordered list in certain ways. So just understand the basics and what they do, that an ordered list creates numerical items. And for example, if you were creating an online manual for, let's say like a chainsaw, you work for a chainsaw company and they wanted to put the manual on the internet. I think of that because I found the manual to my chainsaw on my junk papers the other day. But if you were creating a manual with ordered items like that, and you wanted them in order of how they were in like a text version of that book, then that's what that's useful for. And the browser and search engines can interpret it that way as well. Okay, the next thing I want to get into now, I have Atom open again here, and I want to teach you guys the infamous div tag or division tag. This is the most used tag that you'll probably ever get into with HTML, and it's most commonly used for layout elements. You want to create boxes or columns or containers. The div tag is the most ideal thing to use for that. And the reason being is that in the web browser, which I'm going to demonstrate here soon, items in a div tag don't really get manipulated, so that's a good thing when we don't want that to happen. It will still style things like the heading tags, but it's not going to go any further than their default settings. So up here, we'll create a div, div, and before my HR tag here, I'm going to create a closing one. And then we'll do one more around our unordered list items. And I will tab this. If you highlight a bunch of code and you press tab, you can tab all that in most editors. So that's a little coding trick for you, just to keep your code clean and formatted and readable. And if I refresh this, yeah, you won't see any difference, but the point is the div is a division tag. As you get further into your HTML knowledge, you're going to learn more and more about the div and what it's really capable of. One important thing to note about the div tag is that it's a block element. So think of blocks like Tetris blocks. So a div, by default, they stack on top of one another. But as you learn CSS and get into frameworks and templates and all that stuff, you'll learn that divs can be manipulated to have columns and boxes and borders and all kinds of other cool effects. Okay, the next tag I want to get into is the section tag. And there's a lot of confusion with beginners what a section tag does, so I'm going to demonstrate this. On my div that's surrounding my paragraph and heading tags here, I am going to change both of these to section. And unlike other HTML elements, the section tag does not have an acronym. It's just spelled section. So there's that. Now, pay close attention. I saved it, and when I refresh this, you're going to notice that my heading font size has changed. And that is important to both show and describe how the section tag works. The section tag is different than the div from the div in that it's something that's used for sections of website content. So, for example, let's say I had a blog and I had multiple articles on one page. Well, a good way to separate all those would be to use the section tag. And unlike the div tag, the section, as we see, gets affected by the browser's default styling elements. So after I put all my content in here in a section, it scaled down these fonts. And as you embed section tags, that effect is going to, I don't know the word I'm looking for, I guess roller coaster into the next section. So instead of describing, I'll show. So we're going to put a section in our section tag. And inside of this embedded section, we're going to put another H1. Here is another H1. Look what happens. And I'll put a paragraph here just for the heck of it. Now, when I refresh, look what happens. Our second H1 tag here scaled down even more. In fact, this is confusing because I actually have an H2 up here. But actually, the H1 is within that section, so you can see the difference that happened here though. This is our first H1, and this is our second one. And as you can see, the one that's embedded here, it actually got scaled down more. So as you step into those sections, you're going to learn that the browsers love to manipulate this. See the font size difference? My first heading here is at 1.5 EM, and the one that's in another section in a section, sectionception, it scaled down to 1.17 EM. So the biggest takeaway to remember here is that, again, sections are good for separating website content like blog articles or news items, and div or division tags are best used for building blocks, boxes, containers, columns, etc. And the div tag will not manipulate anything, whereas the section tags typically will. And again, with CSS, that can all be changed and manipulated down the road. So you can make a div work like a section, or a section work like a div. But I don't know why you'd want to do that, but it's all possible with CSS. Okay, the last tag I want to talk about today, and then we're done with this lesson, is the span tag. So to demonstrate the span tag, I'm going to take my line, some more text here, and put a span, S-P-A-N, around the some more line like this. And if I refresh, you'll notice nothing happened. But that is because the span is an inline element. That means, unlike the div, it doesn't stack on top of one another, but instead just retains that inline functionality of whatever that it's wrapped around. Again, that can all be manipulated with CSS later on, but the big takeaway for span tags to remember is that in the future you'll find more use for them. You could put IDs and classes on them. So let's say I was selling a car and like my paragraph, I wanted the words brand new to be highlighted in a paragraph, but not in a heading. Well, I could put a span around those words brand new, put CSS on them to make them big and blue or colorful or whatever I want to do with them. So that's the little takeaway. You're not going to have much use for a span as a beginner, but as you get more advanced, you will find uses for them and learn more about how they function. Okay, YouTube, that's a wrap for part 2. Again, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching again. I hope you guys learned something or enjoy watching these and how websites work. And stay tuned for part 3, where I'm going to teach hyperlinks, how to link to other web servers as well as pages on your own website. That will also involve and entail creating a second web page. So again, thanks for watching. If you like these, please subscribe. It's the best thing you can give back to me for making these videos. Drop a comment if you have suggestions or other ideas for videos, and see you next time.